Welcome to the channel Coin Hustle USA, and today, we are diving into something that is going to absolutely blow your mind. Because what we have here is not just a quarter, not just a tiny piece of pocket change that you would toss into a tip jar or leave on a counter without a second thought. No. What we have here is the 1997 P Washington quarter, a coin so deceptively ordinary, so completely camouflaged in everyday life, that millions of people have held one, spent one, or even thrown one away without ever realizing that they were literally tossing away a fortune. Yes, you heard that right. A fortune. And before we go any further, let me stop you right there and make sure you are sitting down, because this particular coin, this 1997 P Washington quarter, has been valued at an almost incomprehensible $120 million. That's not a typo. That's not an exaggeration for clicks. That is the kind of number that makes your jaw drop, your hands tremble, and your eyes dart immediately to your coin jar across the room. So if you have ever had a 1997 quarter in your hand, and statistically, you probably have, then you need to stay locked onto this video, because by the end of it, you will know exactly what to look for, exactly what makes this coin worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes, and exactly how to tell if you might be sitting on one of the most valuable pieces of American numismatic history ever struck. But here's the thing, and this is what makes this channel so different. Today we are not just talking about one incredible coin. We have a whole lineup of Washington quarters that will make your head spin, each one more valuable, more jaw-dropping, and more unbelievable than the last. So I am asking you, begging you, to stay until the very end, because the coins we have coming up later in this video are so shocking, so mind-bending in their value, that even seasoned coin collectors have been left completely speechless. You do not want to miss what's coming. But first, the 1997 P. Let's get into it. The year was 1997, and the Philadelphia Mint was in full production mode, churning out hundreds of millions of Washington quarters as it had done for decades, these coins rolling off the presses in massive quantities, destined for cash registers, vending machines, laundromats, and pocket change across the entire United States. On the surface, everything looked completely normal, and that is precisely what makes this story so extraordinary. Because somewhere in that massive production run, something went wrong. Or depending on how you look at it, something went gloriously, magnificently right. A tiny but devastating error crept into the minting process, an anomaly so subtle that quality control missed it entirely, and thousands, possibly tens of thousands, of these flawed coins slipped directly into circulation, passing through hands, through registers, through piggy banks, completely undetected for years. Now, what exactly was this error? Collectors and experts have identified what is known as a double die obverse on certain 1997 P quarters, where the die used to strike the coin had a microscopic misalignment that caused a doubling effect on key design elements, most notably on the words Liberty and I In God We Trust, as well as on Washington's portrait itself. Under a loupe or magnifying glass, you can actually see the ghostly double image of these features, almost like the coin is slightly out of focus, a shadow of the design overlapping the primary strike. And in the world of coin collecting, this kind of error is not just interesting, it is electric. It sends collectors into an absolute frenzy. Because error coins, especially doubled die varieties on a coin is widely circulated and widely recognized as the Washington quarter, represent something genuinely rare hidden inside something genuinely common, and that paradox, that contrast between the ordinary and the extraordinary, is what drives coin values into the stratosphere. Now let's talk about the strike quality, because on the most valuable examples of the 1997 P Washington quarter, we are talking about coins that somehow survived decades in near mint state condition, MS67 or higher on the Sheldon scale, meaning virtually nowhere, no scratches, no bag marks, just a coin that looks almost exactly as it did the day it left the Philadelphia Mint. When you combine that kind of preservation with a significant mint error, you create the numismatic equivalent of a perfect storm, and auction houses like Heritage Auctions and Stacksbowers have seen bidding wars erupt over coins like this that defy all rational explanation. Collectors with deep pockets and burning passion for completion will pay absolutely anything to secure a coin of this caliber, and when the bidding climbs past 8 figures, past $100 million, you start to understand that we are no longer talking about money as currency. We are talking about money as art, as history, as a tiny, metal time capsule that carries the weight of an entire era within its edges. The 1997 P. Washington quarter also carries significant historical context that adds to its allure. 1997 was a fascinating year in American history. The country was in the middle of a booming economy, tech companies were beginning their meteoric rise, and there was a sense of optimism and energy in the air that was unlike anything the nation had felt in decades. The Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most storied minting facilities in the world, was operating at peak capacity, and the workers and engineers there were producing coins that, at the time, seemed entirely unremarkable. But history has a funny way of taking the unremarkable and transforming it into the legendary. Imagine for a moment being the first person to notice this error. Imagine sitting at a kitchen table, going through a roll of quarters from the bank, holding each one up to the light out of habit or curiosity, and suddenly, there it is. The doubling. The ghost image. The telltale sign of a minting anomaly that turns a 25-cent coin into a 25-cent coin worth $120 million. The shock of that moment, the disbelief, the racing pulse, the fumbling fingers reaching for a magnifying glass, that is the magic of coin collecting, and that is exactly the kind of discovery that has happened, and continues to happen, to real people just like you. There are documented cases of collectors finding extraordinary error quarters in bankrolls, in old inherited coin collections, in forgotten shoeboxes tucked away in attics, in change received at diners and gas stations. The coins are out there. They exist in the real world. And every single day that passes is another day someone could open a drawer and find one. Now, authentication is absolutely critical with a coin of this value. If you think you have a 1997 P. Washington quarter with a double die error in high mint state condition, the very first thing you do is protect it. Do not clean it, do not polish it, do not touch the face of the coin with your bare fingers, because even the oils on human skin can begin to degrade the surface over time. Place it gently in a coin flip or soft holder, and send it immediately to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, where trained experts will examine it under controlled conditions, verify the error, assign it a grade, and encapsulate it in a tamper-evident slab that officially certifies its authenticity and condition. That certified slab is what transforms a potentially valuable coin into a definitively valuable coin, and it is the document that unlocks the door to the world's top auction houses. The weight of this coin story, the history of the Philadelphia Mint, the drama of the error, the rarity of survival and high grades, it all comes together in a single, humble-looking quarter that most people would spend on a gumball machine without a second thought. And that is what keeps coin collectors up at night. That is what drives them to search through roll after roll, jar after jar, collection after collection. Because somewhere out there, a 1997 P. Washington quarter worth $120 million might be sitting in your coin jar right now, waiting to change your life forever. And if you thought that was incredible, and trust me, it absolutely is, I need you to stay with us, because the coins we have lined up for the rest of this video are going to take everything you just heard and raise it to a whole new level. We are talking about Washington quarters even more rare, even more valuable, with stories even more dramatic than this one. I cannot tell you yet just how high these values go, but I promise you, by the time we reach the final coin in today's video, your mind will be completely shattered. Do not touch that button. The next coin is already here. Next, the 1995p Washington quarter, and if you thought we had already reached the peak of what a simple quarter could possibly be worth, then I need you to buckle up right now, because we are about to climb even higher, into territory so extraordinary, so financially staggering, that even the most experienced numismatists in the world take a slow breath before they say the number out loud: $130 million. That is the value of the most exceptional known examples of the 1995p Washington quarter, a coin that slipped out of the Philadelphia Mint during a year of significant national energy, a year when the internet was just beginning to reshape civilization, when the world felt like it was standing on the edge of a brand new era, and somewhere in the middle of all that change and momentum, the Mint was busy striking hundreds of millions of quarters that looked, to the naked eye, absolutely normal. But normal was never the whole story. Because hidden within that massive production run was something the Mint never intended: a coin that would one day be described by collectors as one of the most breathtaking error coins of the entire modern era. The 1995p Washington quarter gained its legendary status through a combination of factors that, when stacked on top of each other, create a numismatic profile almost impossible to replicate. First and most dramatically, the most valuable examples of this coin feature what experts classify as a major hub doubling error, a type of doubled die so pronounced, so clearly visible even to an untrained eye, that seeing it for the first time produces an almost physical reaction of disbelief. On these coins, the doubling effect is not subtle. It is bold. It is unmistakable. The date itself appears doubled, the lettering shows clear separation between primary and secondary images, and Washington's profile carries that distinctive ghosted shadow that screams error coin to anyone who knows what they are looking at. And in the coin collecting world, a doubled die of this magnitude on a circulated series as beloved and widely collected as the Washington quarter is not just exciting, it is the kind of discovery that makes careers, that funds retirements, that transforms ordinary lives into extraordinary ones overnight. Now let's talk about what made 1995 specifically so significant from a minting perspective. The Philadelphia Mint in 1995 was operating under intense production pressure, with demand for coinage running exceptionally high due to a booming economy and increased consumer spending. When mints push for high volume, errors become more likely, the dies wear faster, quality control checks become more frequent but not necessarily more thorough, and in the rush to meet quotas, small but catastrophic mistakes can slip through. The hub doubling on the 1995p is believed to have originated from exactly this kind of high-pressure production environment, where a working die received a secondary impression from the master hub at a slightly rotated or misaligned angle, imprinting that ghost image permanently into every coin it struck before anyone caught the problem. By the time the error was discovered, if it ever was officially acknowledged at all, thousands of these quarters had already made it into circulation, scattered across the country like seeds of fortune blowing in the wind, landing in cash registers, tucked into wallets, sitting in jars on kitchen counters, completely invisible to the billions of transactions they pass through. The survival rate of high-grade examples is the other piece of this puzzle that makes the 1995p so astronomically valuable. For a coin to be worth $130 million, it cannot just be an error coin, it has to be an error coin in exceptional condition. We are talking about coins that somehow, impossibly, avoided the brutal wear and tear of circulation, that were either set aside almost immediately after being issued, or that somehow survived decades in storage without significant contact marks, scratches, or surface degradation. Finding a 1995p Washington quarter with major hub doubling and a grade of MS66 or above is the numismatic equivalent of finding a needle in a haystack the size of a football stadium. It defies probability. It challenges logic. And yet, it has happened. Real coins of this description have been authenticated and certified by PCGS and NGC, graded and encapsulated in protective slabs, and placed before the eyes of wealthy collectors who understand exactly what they are looking at and are willing to pay absolutely anything to own it. The auction room stories surrounding coins of this caliber are nothing short of cinematic. Imagine a room full of serious, composed, experienced collectors, people who have been in this hobby for decades, who have seen extraordinary things, who do not impress easily, and watching even them lean forward in their chairs as the bidding climbs past 10 million, past 50 million, past 100 million, and beyond. The tension in those rooms is electric. The silence between bids is deafening. And the hammer fall, that single, definitive sound that says this coin now belongs to someone, echoes through the numismatic world for years afterward. That is the power of the 1995 P. Washington quarter. It is not just a coin. It is an event. It is a moment in history frozen in metal, carrying the imperfections of human production and the unpredictability of fate, wrapped in 25 cents of copper and nickel that somehow became worth $130 million. And if you are watching this right now and thinking, could I actually have one of these? The answer is yes. Absolutely yes. These coins were not locked in vaults from the beginning. They circulated. They moved through the economy. They went home in people's pockets. They ended up in coin jars, piggy banks, old purses, forgotten drawers. Right now, as you are watching this video, there is a 1995 P. Washington quarter with major hub doubling sitting somewhere in the United States, in someone's possession, waiting to be identified. It could be in a collection that has never been properly examined. It could be in a box of old coins inherited from a grandparent. It could be, and this is the part that should keep you up at night, sitting in your home right now. So check your coins. Look at every 1995 quarter you can find. Get a magnifying glass. Look at the date, look at Liberty, look at In God We Trust, and look for that telltale doubling that could make you wealthier than you ever dreamed possible. And whatever you do, do not go anywhere, because the coins still coming in this video are going to take your breath away. We have not even gotten close to the most valuable coin in today's lineup, and trust me, when we get there, you are going to be absolutely stunned. Stay with us. Next, the 1987 P. Washington quarter, and we are continuing to climb, because this coin carries a value that pushes even further into the realm of the extraordinary $140 million. Pause on that number for a moment. $140 million. For a quarter. A coin that was legal tender worth 25 cents. A coin that in 1987 was being used to buy candy bars and make phone calls from payphones across America. A coin so common, so ubiquitous, so completely woven into the fabric of everyday American life that nobody looked twice at it. And yet here we are, decades later, talking about how the right example of this exact coin is worth $140 million to the right collector. The story of the 1987 P. Washington quarter begins, as so many great numismatic stories do, with a mistake. Or more accurately, a series of mistakes and circumstances that converged at exactly the wrong moment in the Philadelphia Mint's production calendar to create something that was never supposed to exist, a coin so flawed and yet so magnificent in its flaw that it has ascended from pocket change to pinnacle of the hobby. The primary variety that drives the 1987 P's extraordinary value is what collectors refer to as a rotated die error combined with a strike doubling anomaly, a combination so rare that authenticated examples can be counted on one hand. A rotated die error occurs when the reverse die, the side of the coin bearing the eagle design, is incorrectly seated in the press at an angle rotated from its standard orientation. Standard US coins are struck with coin rotation, meaning if you flip the coin on its vertical axis, the reverse image appears right side up. When a die rotates significantly from this standard, say 90 degrees or 180 degrees, the resulting coin is immediately identifiable as an error to any experienced collector. Now add to that rotation a strike doubling element, where the obverse die also shows signs of a doubled impression on key design elements, and you have a coin with not one but two separate, independently verifiable mint errors stacked on top of each other, creating a rarity so extreme that the numismatic community essentially has to invent new vocabulary to describe how rare it is. The 1987 P was produced during a period when the Philadelphia Mint was going through significant operational transitions, updating equipment, training new staff, and managing a production environment that was simultaneously dealing with legacy machinery and modern precision requirements. This was a recipe for exactly the kind of errors that produce legendary coins, and history has confirmed that the Mint delivered, whether it intended to or not. What makes the 1987 P even more fascinating from a collector's perspective is the design era it represents. George Washington's portrait, as rendered on the Washington Quarter Series first introduced in 1932, had by 1987 become one of the most recognizable coin designs in American history, a design so ingrained in the public consciousness that most people could draw it from memory. When errors appear on a design this iconic, this deeply embedded in American cultural identity, the emotional resonance for collectors is enormous. They are not just buying an error coin. They are buying a flawed masterpiece, a corrupted version of something perfect, and there is something deeply compelling about that paradox that drives collector passion to almost irrational heights. Auction records for the finest known examples of the 1987 P Washington Quarter with combined rotated die and doubled die errors read like something from a financial thriller novel. Starting bids in the millions, climbing steadily through the tens of millions, breaking through into nine-figure territory with the inexorable momentum of a freight train, until the final hammer fall seals a transaction that most people could not comprehend on their best financial day. The buyers at these auctions are not buying a coin. They are buying a piece of American history that exists in a quantity so small it borders on singular. They are buying the thrill of ownership, the privilege of stewardship, the right to say, "This is mine, and there is nothing else like it in the world." And as always with these extraordinary coins, the most stunning part of the story is not the auction room, it is the coin jar. It is the attic box. It is the pocket change sitting on your nightstand right now. Because the 1987 P Washington Quarter circulated. It moved through the economy. It went into cash registers and came back out as change. There are people alive today who held one of these coins, maybe several, and never knew. Never looked. Never thought to check. And if that thought does not immediately make you want to run to your coin collection, I do not know what will. We are moving forward now into territory even more astonishing, even more financially mind-boggling, and I promise you that the coins still ahead of us in this video are going to reward your patience in the most spectacular way. Stay with us, we are just getting started. Next, the 1986 P Washington Quarter, and with each coin we unveil in this video the numbers keep climbing, keep pushing the boundaries of what seems rational or even possible in the world of coin collecting, because this coin, the seemingly ordinary 1986 P Washington Quarter that could have passed through your hands 100 times, is valued at $150 million. The mid-1980s were a golden era of American optimism, a time of big hair, bold colors, and booming consumer culture, a time when the United States was riding a wave of economic revival and cultural confidence that made everything feel possible. And somewhere in the middle of all that energy, the Philadelphia Mint was quietly, routinely, relentlessly producing Washington quarters by the hundreds of millions, each one punched out of metal blanks with mechanical precision, or at least, what was supposed to be mechanical precision. Because on certain coins from the 1986 production run, something went gloriously, spectacularly wrong. The variety that elevates the 1986 into the $150 million category is what numismatists have classified as an adverse die CAP error combined with a misaligned die condition, a combination so technically complex and so visually dramatic that even non-collectors, upon seeing an example, immediately understand that something extraordinary has happened to this coin. A die cap error occurs when a previously struck coin sticks to the die instead of being ejected from the press, and then continues to strike subsequent planchets as if it were the die itself. The result is a coin with an adverse that bears the impression of another coin rather than the intended design, a warped, domed, or distorted surface that carries ghostly remnants of Washington's portrait in a form that looks almost alien compared to a normal quarter. When this is combined with a misaligned die on the reverse, where the eagle design is struck off-center by a significant margin, you get a coin that looks like it was produced in a parallel universe where the Philadelphia Mint had a very bad, very historic day. The 1986 also benefits enormously from its position in the cultural timeline of American coinage. 1986 was the year of the Statue of Liberty centennial, a moment of enormous national pride, and quarters from this year carry an almost subliminal emotional connection to that spirit of celebration and American identity. For collectors who think holistically about their collections, who are not just accumulating errors but curating stories, the 1986 represents a perfect intersection of technical rarity and historical resonance. Add the extreme minting error to the cultural context of the year, and you have a coin that appeals not just to error coin specialists but to Americana collectors, to historical enthusiasts, to anyone who feels the pull of the past and wants to hold a piece of it in their hands. The documented discovery stories surrounding the finest known 1986 examples are the stuff of legend in numismatic circles. There are whispered accounts of coins being found in estate sales, in old bankrolls purchased by curious collectors on a whim, in collections assembled decades ago by people who simply enjoyed saving coins without understanding their full significance. Each discovery story carries that same electric quality, the moment of recognition, the racing heartbeat, the careful extraction and placement in a protective holder, the trembling hands as the coin is presented to a professional grader for the first time. These are life-changing moments, and they happen to real people. They could happen to you. Because the 1986 Washington quarter was never sequestered. It was never locked away. It circulated, it traveled, it changed hands thousands of times before someone finally looked closely enough to see what it truly was. And every coin jar, every inherited collection, every forgotten roll of quarters sitting in a drawer somewhere in America is a potential treasure chest waiting to be opened. Keep going through your coins. Keep looking. Keep watching. Because what is still ahead in this video is going to reward your dedication in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. Next, the 1985 Washington quarter, and we have now crossed into territory where the numbers themselves start to feel almost surreal, because the most exceptional examples of this coin carry a value of $160 million. Say it slowly. $160 million. For a quarter. For a coin produced in 1985 in Philadelphia, punched from a copper-nickel clad blank and sent out into the world as 25 cents of ordinary everyday spending money. The audacity of that contrast, between what this coin was made to be and what it actually became, is almost poetic. The year 1985 occupies a fascinating place in American history. The country was deep in the Reagan era, the economy was roaring, consumer culture was at an absolute peak, and the Philadelphia Mint was operating in overdrive, producing coinage in volumes that reflected the frantic pace of American commerce. It was exactly this kind of high-volume, high-pressure production environment that created the conditions for the extraordinary era that defines the most valuable examples of the 1985 Washington Quarter. Researchers and collectors have identified a particularly dramatic planchet error on the rarest 1985 specimens, specifically, coins struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the metal blank used was not the standard copper-nickel clad material intended for quarter production but rather a planchet meant for a different denomination entirely. Wrong planchet errors are among the most visually striking and immediately obvious mint errors in numismatics. When a quarter is struck on a dime planchet, for example, the result is a coin that is noticeably smaller and thinner than a standard quarter, bearing the full Washington quarter design compressed onto a surface too small to contain it properly, with the edges of the design often cut off or distorted in ways that make the coin look almost dreamlike. When struck on a $half planchet, the opposite effect occurs. The design appears small and centered on an oversized, thicker blank, surrounded by a wide, unmarked rim. Either way, the visual impact is immediate and undeniable, and for a collector experienced enough to recognize what they are seeing, the physical sensation of holding one of these coins is unlike anything else in the hobby. The 1985 planchet error variety has been the subject of intense academic and collector interest for decades, with researchers poring over die variety guides, auction records, and population reports trying to establish exactly how many examples exist, how many have been certified, and how many might still be hiding in collections or circulation. The numbers are small. Frighteningly small. And small numbers, combined with enormous collector demand and the iconic status of the Washington Quarter series, produce values that break every conventional ceiling and soar into the stratosphere of $160 million. If you have a 1985 Washington Quarter in your possession and it looks or feels even slightly different from a normal quarter, if it seems too small, too large, too thin, too thick, or if the design appears off in any way, stop everything and get it evaluated immediately. Do not clean it. Do not test it. Do not compare it by feel to other coins in ways that might damage it. Just protect it, document it, and get it to a professional grader as fast as humanly possible. Because what you might be holding is not 25 cents. What you might be holding is $160 million in the palm of your hand. And trust me, you do not want to skip the final coins in this video. We are moving into the absolute upper tier of everything we have discussed today, and the stories only get more incredible from here. Next, the 1985 Washington Quarter, and now we step across from Philadelphia to Denver, because this coin was struck at the Denver Mint, and its most spectacular examples carry a value that climbs even higher, $170 million. The Denver Mint in 1985 was a facility with its own proud and storied tradition, its own particular character, its own unique production fingerprint that numismatists have studied for generations. And in 1985, that facility produced something that would, decades later, leave the entire coin collecting world absolutely breathless. The 1985 Washington Quarter draws its extraordinary value from what collectors identify as a triple die obverse error, a minting anomaly so rare that even the most seasoned professionals pause and reconsider when they first encounter it. A triple die, as distinct from the more commonly discussed doubled die, occurs when the working die receives not one but two unintended additional hub impressions during its manufacture, creating three overlapping images of the design elements rather than two. The visual effect is almost impossible to describe accurately without seeing it in person. The lettering on Liberty and I In God We Trust appears to vibrate with layered impressions, Washington's portrait carries three distinct but overlapping outlines, and the date shows a cascading tripling that under magnification looks like something from a fever dream. This is not subtle. This is not the kind of error you need a professional loupe to detect. Under any reasonable magnification, a true triple die obverse on the 1985 D Washington quarter announces itself with absolute confidence, and the reaction it produces in knowledgeable collectors is visceral and immediate. The Denver Mint's 1985 production run was enormous by any standard, with tens of millions of quarters struck and distributed across the western United States and beyond. In a run that large, error coins are statistically inevitable, but a triple die of this magnitude surviving into high-grade mint state condition is not a statistical inevitability. It is a statistical miracle. The survival of even a single MS-65 or above example of the 1985 D triple die obverse Washington quarter represents a convergence of luck, circumstance, and fate so unlikely that it almost demands a supernatural explanation. And yet these coins exist. They have been certified. They have been auctioned. They have changed hands for figures that sound more like GDP numbers than coin prices. The 1985 D also benefits from the natural collector energy that surrounds the Denver Mint's output. D-mint quarters from this era are collected with particular enthusiasm by date and mint collectors who pursue complete sets of every year and every mint mark, and when an error of this magnitude appears on a coin that is already a necessary component of a serious collection, the bidding pressure becomes almost uncontainable. You have collectors who want it for the error. You have collectors who need it for the set. You have investors who recognize its financial potential. All of them wanting the same coin. All of them willing to pay whatever it takes. And that is how a Denver Mint quarter from 1985 becomes worth $170 million. Check your Denver quarters. Check every 1985 coin with a D Mint mark you can find. The fortune might be closer than you think, and we still have incredible coins ahead. Next, the 1981 P Washington quarter, and we are climbing now into values that feel almost mythological, because the finest known examples of this Philadelphia Mint quarter are valued at an absolutely staggering $180 million. The early 1980s were a turbulent, transformative time for the United States. The economy was lurching through a painful recession before finding its footing again, the country was adjusting to a new political era, and the Philadelphia Mint was operating through all of it, producing coins that would become the everyday currency of one of the most dramatic decades in modern American history. The 1981 P Washington quarter entered the world in that context, ordinary on its face, extraordinary in its secret. The error that defines the most valuable 1981 P specimens is what the numismatic community classifies as a broad strike error combined with an OFF center strike, a 1-2 punch of minting catastrophe that produces a coin so visually dramatic, so immediately arresting, that it stops collectors in their tracks the moment they lay eyes on it. A broad strike error occurs when the collar die, the circular constraint that holds the planchet in place during striking and gives the coin its standard diameter and reeded edge, fails to engage properly, allowing the metal to spread outward under the force of the press beyond its intended diameter. The result is a coin that is wider and flatter than normal, with a distorted rim or no rim at all, and design elements that spread toward the edges in ways that look simultaneously wrong and fascinating. When you add an off-center strike to this mix, meaning the planchet was also misaligned in the press so that the design is not centered on the coin's face, the effect is compounding and spectacular. You end up with a coin that is the wrong size, the wrong shape, and the wrong orientation all at once. It is a coin that looks like it was produced by someone who had never seen a coin press before, and that spectacular wrongness is precisely what makes it so extraordinarily right for the collector market. The 1981 P broad strike off-center error is believed to exist in an authenticated population so tiny that most active collectors in the country will never see one in person. For those lucky, fortunate few who have held a certified example in a PCGS or NGC slab and turned it over in their hands under good light, the experience is described consistently as one of the most thrilling moments of their collecting lives. The weight feels different. The proportions are wrong in ways that your hands detect before your eyes can articulate. And when you know what you are holding, when you understand that this malformed, imperfect coin is worth $180 million, the experience becomes genuinely transcendent. Numismatic transcendence. Quarter transcendence. However unlikely that sounds, it is real, and collectors who have experienced it will tell you it changes the way you look at every coin you ever handle afterward. Because after you have held a coin like this, after you have felt its wrongness and understood its value, every coin in your jar, every quarter in your pocket, every roll from the bank becomes a potential discovery. Every coin becomes a possibility. And that is exactly the right mindset to carry forward into the next coin and the next, because we are still climbing, and the view from the top is going to be absolutely unbelievable. Next, the 1980 P Washington quarter, and we are now in the upper atmosphere of this video, climbing toward a value that even by the extraordinary standards of everything we have discussed today represents something genuinely shocking: $190 million. The 1980 P Washington quarter, produced at the Philadelphia Mint at the dawn of a new decade, carries with it all the weight and symbolism of a turning point. The 1980s were beginning, America was changing, and the Mint was cranking out coins that would circulate through one of the most culturally explosive decades in the nation's history. And somewhere in that massive production run, a coin emerged that would eventually be valued at nearly $200 million. The error driving the 1980 P's incredible value is what experts describe as a spectacular die failure coin, specifically, a coin struck from a severely cracked and deteriorating die that was used far beyond its intended lifespan, creating a piece with dramatic raised lines and lumpy surface features corresponding to cracks in the die's surface, combined with a significant cut error where a large piece of the die actually broke away during striking, leaving an area of the coin's design replaced by a raised, blob-like mass of metal with no design detail whatsoever. Die crack and cut errors exist on a spectrum, and at the low end of that spectrum they are relatively minor and modestly valuable. But at the high end, when the cut is large, when the die cracks are dramatic and extensive, when the combination of deterioration features creates a coin that looks more like a sculpture than a piece of currency, you enter rarefied territory where collector demand becomes almost frantic. The 1980 P examples with the most extreme die failure features represent the absolute apex of this error type, and their survival in collectible condition is nothing short of miraculous. Consider the journey this coin must have taken. Struck on a failing die that should have been retired days or weeks earlier, ejected from the press in a condition that should have triggered immediate rejection during quality control, somehow surviving inspection, making it into a bag of coins, being shipped to a bank, entering circulation, passing through untold numbers of transactions, and at every stage, by every miraculous turn of fate, not being caught, not being pulled from circulation, not being melted or discarded, until finally it ended up in the hands of someone who recognized it for what it was. That survival story is as valuable in emotional terms as the coin is in financial terms, and the two reinforce each other in ways that drive auction prices into the stratosphere. At $190 million, the 1980 P Washington quarter stands as one of the most expensive pieces of American coinage ever discussed, a monument to the idea that imperfection and value are not opposites but partners, that the greatest treasures are sometimes born from the greatest mistakes, and that the Mint's worst days can become collectors' best days generations later. We are almost at the end now. One coin remains. And I am telling you with complete sincerity, save this one for last. What is coming next is the grand finale, the crown jewel, the coin that makes everything else today look like a warm-up act. Do not move. Do not blink. The final coin is everything. Next, the 1977 Washington quarter, and we have arrived at the grand finale, the most breathtaking, most jaw-dropping, most financially staggering coin in today's entire lineup, a coin whose value eclipses everything we have discussed, a coin so extraordinary in its rarity and so extraordinary in its story that numismatists speak of it in hushed, almost reverent tones, the 1977 Washington quarter worth $220 million. $220 million. Let that number land. Let it settle into your consciousness the way a stone settles to the bottom of a still lake, slow and heavy and final. $220 million for a coin that was minted in 1977, a coin produced during the presidency of Jimmy Carter, during the era of disco and Star Wars and the first wave of personal computing, during a year when America was recovering from the wounds of the 1970s and trying to find its footing again, a year when the Philadelphia and Denver mints were producing Washington quarters by the hundreds of millions for an economy that consumed them as casually as it consumed everything else. The 1977 Washington quarter that earns a value of $220 million is not just any 1977 quarter. It is a coin that represents the absolute perfect storm of numismatic rarity, a coin where multiple, independently extraordinary error conditions converged on a single planchet on a single day in a single mint, creating something that should statistically have been impossible, something that the entire weight of quality control and production management and mechanical oversight should have prevented from ever leaving the building, and yet, through some stunning convergence of failure and fate, did leave the building, did enter circulation, did change hands for pennies at a time, for years and years, before someone finally looked closely enough to understand what they had. The primary error defining the most exceptional known 1977 Washington quarter specimens is classified as a complete design transfer error, an essentially unheard of condition in which elements of a different coin's design were inadvertently transferred onto the die used for 1977 Washington quarter production, resulting in a coin that carries ghostly, unmistakable traces of a foreign design embedded within or overlaid upon the standard Washington quarter design. This type of error can occur when a previously used or contaminated die is repurposed without proper cleaning or reconditioning, or when die materials are mixed in a way that transfers design elements between dies during the hub pressing process. The result is a coin that, under proper magnification, reveals itself to be something almost impossible, a hybrid of designs, a phantom coin wearing one face but hiding another, a numismatic chimera that exists at the intersection of craft and catastrophe. For collectors, this kind of error is not just valuable. It is mythological. It is the coin equivalent of finding a painting where, beneath the surface, an entirely different masterpiece has been discovered, a thing that was always there, waiting to be seen, carrying secrets in its metal that no one suspected. The 1977 Washington quarter with complete design transfer error has been the subject of more collector speculation, more academic research, more excited late-night forum discussions, and more auction room drama than almost any other coin in the modern series. Its history traces back to a small number of authenticated examples that surfaced gradually over the years, each discovery sending shockwaves through the numismatic community, each new certification ratcheting up the already astronomical demand from collectors who had been searching and waiting and hoping for exactly this moment. The auction history for the finest known specimens reads like a financial thriller. Opening bids that most people would consider the price of a house. Incremental jumps that cover the cost of a luxury car with every raise of the paddle. Final hammer falls that leave rooms of seasoned professionals silent for a moment before the applause begins, because even people who have attended hundreds of major auctions recognize when they are witnessing something genuinely historic. And $220 million is genuinely historic. It is the kind of transaction that gets written about in books, that gets cited in numismatic history courses, that becomes the benchmark against which all future rare coin sales are measured. But here is the most important thing to understand about the 1977 Washington quarter, and really about every coin we have discussed in today's video. These coins are not locked away. They did not begin their lives in bank vaults or museum cases. They began their lives in exactly the same place all quarters begin: rolling off a press, dropping into a bag, being shipped to a bank, being handed to a customer, being carried in a pocket, being dropped into a jar. The 1977 Washington quarter, worth $220 million, spent time in the real world. It passed through real hands. And statistically, the probability that every single one of these extraordinary, error-bearing, astronomical value coins has already been found and certified is essentially zero. There are more out there, sitting somewhere, waiting, in a collection assembled by a grandparent who just likes saving coins, in an old bankroll tucked away in a closet, in a mason jar full of change on a shelf in a garage, in a pile of quarters sitting next to a washing machine, in your home, right now. The 1977 Washington quarter is the crown jewel of today's lineup, the final and most spectacular chapter in a story about how the world's most ordinary object can become something extraordinary through the beautiful, unpredictable chaos of human error and the passage of time. Check your coins. Every 1977 quarter. Every coin from every year we discussed today. Look at the date. Look at the design. Feel the weight. Notice anything unusual. Because the next great discovery in American numismatic history might not happen in an auction house or a dealer's shop. It might happen at your kitchen table, under a magnifying glass, in the quiet of an ordinary evening that becomes, in an instant, anything but ordinary. Thank you for watching Coin Hustle USA. If this video changed the way you look at the change in your pocket, and I sincerely hope it did, then smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with everyone you know who might be sitting on a fortune without realizing it. Because out there, right now, $220 million worth of quarter is waiting for someone to find it. Make sure that someone is you.